My show and tell, first one for One Up Digital Marketing, is very on brand. It is on work music, specifically how it can increase productivity. And we're also going to discuss what to listen to should you choose to listen to music while you work. So just a brief itinerary of what we're going to cover. I'm going to touch on the sources that I used for this presentation, what some of the research says on listening to music while working, some general music listening tips, genres to avoid, best genres, and some of my personal recommendations. The three sources that I primarily used, and within these sources, they referenced a number of studies that I will be touching on in just a bit, are The Best Kind of Music to Listen to While Working by Caroline Bologna with the Huffington Post, 5 Types of Music That Increase Your Productivity According to Science by Melissa Chu at Medium, and Here's What Science Says About How Music Affects Your Productivity by Christina Marfus at 7 Pace. So the research that I'm just going to discuss briefly here is referenced in those articles that I primarily was using for this presentation. There was a study published in the Psychology of Music back in 2005 that links listening to music with higher quality work. There is a study published in Trends in Cognitive Science, which was quite interesting, that found that music was better at combating stress and anxiety than actual anti-anxiety medication for patients awaiting surgery. Fairly dramatic example, but interesting results from that study. There's a phenomenon that's been floating or been discussed in this field called the Mozart effect, which was first referenced in a 1993 study. Basically, it's they've seen that there's been increased brain activity that occurs when someone is listening to classical music from scans and studies that they've done. Now, I will counter this by saying that there are other studies out there that kind of refute some of these points that have shown that certain types of music, like pop music with lyrics, can be distracting and can impede reading and comprehension. These articles also covered music listening tips, and I've also thrown in some of my own tips as well. The first one is choose music that won't distract you. I'll go into some general genres to avoid, but this can vary from person to person as well. You know what music you find you can put on in the background and just tune out, or just, is perfectly fine to just have on while you're working on stuff, and some music that you find more distracting because it engages you more. I find there's certain types of music that's better for working out, for example, or just, walking around and stuff like that. So time and place for certain styles of music. This isn't necessarily something I do, but I thought this was an interesting tip that some of these articles shared, that sometimes it's a good idea to listen to more engaging music between tasks to give you a boost, like throwing on a favorite song or something like that to hype you up before you keep going throughout your day. This next tip was something that I found has been helpful for me, is to mix up what style of music you're listening to throughout the day. And it can be very subtle. Sometimes it's just a matter of like switching to a different playlist. But I find if I'm listening to the same type of music for too long, or something in a similar style, I can start losing focus because I'm really starting to tune out the music that's going on. Minding the volume is a good idea, just in general, not only to save your ears, especially if you're plugged in on headphones, but it's better to, if the music's too loud, it can be too distracting for your own work. So low to mid volume is suggested. And also, of course, with all this, working with music is a personal preference. If you find that you're much more effective working in complete silence, that's also perfectly fine.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Sorry if I can add again. Another tip I would add is because I wear headset all the time because I'm on calls all the time, and I find when I listen to music in headset, I find it very distracting. But if I unplug my headset and let it come from a computer, I find it a lot less distracting. So if it's like coming from the background as opposed to right in your ear, I find it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, that can also work for some people as well. I mean, I just use my headphones all the time, but that's that I imagine that would also be kind of similar to working in like a retail space or something like that, where you have music going on in a radio or something like that. Yeah, so this next section, I'm going to go over genres to avoid. This guy looks like he's having a great time, but don't know how much work he's really getting done. So first one, some of these are going to be fairly obvious. Some of these maybe less so. Hard rock and metal. Love this stuff. Love my fast, energetic, loud rock music. Not really good for getting work done, though. Really good for workouts for me. But skip that. Similar vein, rap and hip hop, although I will add a detail that part of the reason why this can be a very distracting genre of music to listen to is it's very lyrically driven. A lot of the enjoyment you can get from the song is the actual words that are being spoken by the performers. And I find for myself, it's comparable to trying to listen to a podcast while working on something. I start concentrating more on what, in this case, the artist is saying than the work I'm doing. Hard techno has its time and place at a festival or something, but it's kind of similar to hard rock and metal. It's loud, it's in your face, be very distracting. Sorry, Skrillex. Sorry, Steve Aoki. Not good for working. Prog rock, jazz, and avant-garde. This one's a little less common, but in this case, it's music that has like a lot of complexity and a lot of shifting parts and passages. Can be distracting because there isn't like that consistency with the more preferred genres that I'll touch on. I will say as an addendum, early Miles Davis might not be a bad decision, but later career, more avant-garde, Bitches Brew. Miles Davis, probably give that a skip. Frank Zappa should be obvious for anyone who is familiar with Frank Zappa. Lyrical pop. Now, the reason behind this, besides me wanting to include this funny photo of Beyonce, is because if you really like, your pop music and you have your favorite songs that you love to sing along to, might get caught up in singing along at your desk rather than focusing on what you need to work on. So, maybe avoiding some of the more popular stuff that you'll be more inclined to dance along to. Now, on to best genres. So we already talked about stuff that doesn't work. I'm going to focus on types of genres that have been discussed in these articles and from my own experience that work quite well for getting projects done. Classical music, completely instrumental, can be very uplifting, very calm at points, very good for concentration. There's actually a lot of studies on the benefits of listening to classical music while working, reading, activities like that, studying. I will say with classical, you do have to be a bit selective. Beethoven has some more upbeat bangers, as I call them, and Gustav Mahler is a more experimental late 1800s composer, can be a bit shrill. So I'll go into some of my suggestions for classical artists. Nature sounds. Now, this isn't a genre that I listen to, but for some people it's very relaxing. It's good for enhancing cognitive function. It's also really great for meditation and deep sleep too. And I'd recommend seeing what sounds work best for you from the guided meditation apps that I use. For example, I love the sound of rushing water, but I probably wouldn't be as inclined to listen to bird song, but that's an option. Film scores. Epic and sweeping in tone, of course. It can give you an energy boost, instrumental as well. And I'd recommend, if you want to listen to film scores, that you choose your favorites, as familiarity is proven to improve mood. And finally, we've got low beats and chill electronics. So mostly instrumental. There's some light vocals on some of these tracks, but I don't find it to be particularly distracting. This is my personal go-to genre. What's nice is that there's a variety of styles and playlists for different moods. Like some of them are like, early morning, tropical, late night, early sunset, for example. With what I like about this genre especially is there's enough going on to prevent me from getting distracted from stray thoughts, but it's still good background music. And then finally, my recommendations. So for classical, I'd recommend Mozart. Maybe avoid the operas though. Vivaldi, Four Seasons, classic choice. Chopin, largely piano work, very relaxed, and Debussy, kind of similar vein as Chopin. Electronic, I am very partial to Emancipator, Taiko, and Bonobo, largely instrumental stuff. There's
Are they
some
brothers?
complex, pardon?
Are they brothers?
I was gonna say, it's just like when I pulled all their photos, I'm like, oh my gosh, these guys look all so similar. There's I'm really partial to these artists because there is some complexity going on in the arrangements, but it's still very chill in its atmosphere. It's very good, just like deep concentration music for me. There's also some great options for tons of playlists on YouTube, especially if you don't use a streaming service. There's Lo-Fi Girl, who we have been introduced to before. There's also fantastic music, and there is chill hop music with this adorable raccoon eating ramen as their mascot. And then I've got a couple albums that I personally love to throw on while I'm working on stuff. I really like Shepherd's Moons by Enya, So by Peter Gabriel, and Ghost by the Devin Townsend Project. Caveat there, just that album by the Devin Townsend Project, because some of this stuff is a lot more on the metal side of things. And that's my presentation. Any questions?